Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. And of course, we are on YouTube at Stillman and Co. Like and subscribe. You know, our subscriber count is good for a show that is, 2 years old or whatever it is. Our subscriber count is good. But at the same time, I'm sitting here and I'm like, let's get it up. Let's keep getting it up. Let's keep adding. Let's keep doing all the things that we've been doing before. So I do want to start today's program, and something is at least a little odd as far as the studio is concerned here with our studio software, but I'm sure it's all fine. But I want to start today's show on what I thought was kind of a shocking topic yesterday, and that was the topic surrounding Matt LaFleur. So apparently Matt LaFleur is, I guess, on the hot seat in Green Bay. And we talked about it yesterday. And I said yesterday on the program that given the fact that Amy, when Matt LaFleur interviewed for the head coaching job with the Titans in 2018 and would later become the offensive coordinator, Amy loved Matt LaFleur in the head coaching interview process. Chad Brinker comes from the Green Bay Packers, where, of course, as I have said many times, I feel like we know this, Chad Brinker cannot take a dump without talking about the Green Bay Packers. I saw Noah here on the YouTube chat said, over under on talking about Sam Darnold in the first 5 minutes. Well, I wasn't going to bring up Sam Darnold, but if you think I talk about Sam Darnold all the time, that's how Chad Brinker talks about the Green Bay Packers. So I will tell you right now, when it comes to the Matt LaFleur stuff, if he wants the job, if he gets fired in Green Bay and he wants to be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans, he'll get the job if he wants it. But I have to ask this question before we go in deep on talking about what kind of coaching staff Matt LaFleur would have, or what Matt LaFleur could do with Cam Ward, and is it the right offensive system for Cam Ward, and I have to ask the question, is Matt LaFleur actually on the hot seat? It sounds like people in Green Bay seem to think he is, in fact, on the hot seat. And then everybody outside of Green Bay is stunned at the idea that Matt LaFleur, who is 72-36-1 as a head coach, would actually be on the hot seat. So I'm not going to pretend like I know what's going on in Green Bay. I can't pretend that. I can't tell you anything. But, I mean, when it comes to, and by the way, I have no idea how I'm going to end this show. Like, it just hit me. So I'm looking up at the thing, and there's usually like a end the show. I don't even know how I'm going to do that today for whatever this is, for whatever's going on here on our streaming service today. Well, anywho, so again, when it comes to the idea of whether or not Matt LaFleur is going to be fired in Green Bay, I'm like, I don't live in Green Bay. I don't know what the score is in Green Bay. I don't know what the people in Green Bay are thinking and saying. So I say, hey, let's just go right to it. So this is what Matt Schneidman wrote in The Athletic when talking about whether or not, this is what the people are saying, quote, Team President Ed Policy's job in part is to serve the people who own his team. By the way, Braden Gall, 440 Sports, technically an owner of the Green Bay Packers. He will join us in a little bit as well. What message would it send to them and other fans if LaFleur guides the Packers to another milquetoast finish while his offense sputters but gets a long-term extension? That Policy is satisfied with just being above average? Because last time anyone familiar with the Packers checked, that's not good enough in Green Bay. Now, again, it was Matt Schneidman of The Athletic, who asked Matt LaFleur on the record after the game Monday night whether or not he was on the hot seat. And so I'm starting to wonder, is this like one guy who's in there saying, like, LaFleur, he's got to go, and LaFleur might be in trouble. And so now there's a guy asking LaFleur about his job status, and then there's a guy writing about LaFleur and his job status, but the guy asking and writing, it's the same guy. So I have a hard time following that one. So it's starting to feel like Matt Schneiderman is the one carrying the torch out there for Matt LaFleur to be fired. So I wonder what everybody else is saying. And Easton Freeze at A to Z Sports chimed in. He talked to Wendell Ferrara, who I guess covers the Packers for A to Z Sports. And in his story, again at A to Z Sports, he wrote, it's still questionable. This is Wendell Ferrara, who covers the Packers. Quote, it's still questionable at best to consider firing a head coach that has been as successful as Matt LaFleur has been, especially a respected offensive mind and play designer. But the crowd wanting to get rid of him has gotten bigger and bigger around Green Bay. The Packers still have an 81% chance of making the playoffs, so LaFleur won't be fired during the season, or at least not before the team gets eliminated. But if the offensive play for the rest of the season the way it has for the past month, the conversation around LaFleur could get a lot more real beyond weekly social media overreactions. So what that sounded like was LaFleur's not in any imminent danger during the season, and that would make sense because Amy Adams Strunk doesn't own the Green Bay Packers. LaFleur's not in trouble during the season, but there is a small groundswell of support to get rid of Matt LaFleur. At least that's what I took away from it. So I can't tell you what's going on in Green Bay because I don't live the Green Bay Packers. I'm not there. I don't go to their press conferences. I don't talk to people off the record who work for the Green Bay Packers. When the Titans told everyone in Thanksgiving of 2023 that Mike Vrabel was going to be the coach in 2024, I didn't believe it because I knew the Titans. And I had lived through Mike Mularkey, and I knew that the Titans don't tell the truth. So when the Titans got out there and said, we're not firing Mike Vrabel, he's our Mike Tomlin, he's our John Harbaugh, I said, Diana Rossini can report whatever she wants. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't change the fact. It doesn't change reality that I don't trust the Titans. They lie about everything, and they're probably lying about this. Now, here's what I do know. When it comes to Matt LaFleur, and it comes to the potential that Matt LaFleur could be on the hot seat, the potential that something could, here's what I do. Green Bay as an organization, their reputation is that they would be more likely to keep Matt LaFleur because in my experience of watching the Green Bay Packers, they don't overreact and they don't try to fix things that aren't broken. Again, I go back to Amy Adams Strunk, and you can be upset about John Robinson and the draft picks and everything else all you want. They were 7-5 in first place, and they had won the division 2 years in a row prior to that. They've been in the playoffs 3 years in a row. By NFL standards, that's not broken. There was some chatter when the Ravens weren't doing well about, could John Harbaugh be on his way out? And I'm like, no, because the Ravens aren't stupid. The Ravens aren't impulsive. The Ravens don't overreact. The Ravens are going to ride this out with John Harbaugh. He'll be the coach next year. The truth is, Matt LaFleur, again, I expect to be the coach next year in Green Bay because that's Green Bay's reputation. But you have to remember who runs the Green Bay Packers. And you have to remember, again, it's a very unique situation. Ed Policy is their new president. Mark Murphy was their president, 70 years old, mandatory retirement age. He has to go. Ed Policy in. Now, I don't know Ed Policy, but if there is anything that I know is rampant in the National Football League, it is my guy syndrome. We call it MGS on this program. And I don't know if Ed Policy has MGS, but I do know it's rampant in the league. It has absolutely torn apart your organization. Talking about the Titans. My guy, my coach, my general manager, my team president, my I mean, it is absolutely run rampant. So, again, I don't know what Ed policy is, but if there's anything I know about the NFL, it's that my guy syndrome is a real thing. And if you are a big believer in my guy syndrome, the Green Bay Packers struggling on offense post Micah Parsons trade, when you're paying Jordan Love $55 million a year and you drafted Matthew Golden in the first round, that's the perfect opportunity to bring in my guy. To say, oh, well, we lost in the first round of the playoffs with Matt LaFleur. We always lose in the first round of the playoffs with Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur sucks. Let's move on. Let's go get my guy. Let's go bring in my guy. So on one hand, Green Bay's reputation says we do not just fire coaches like the moronic teams do. On the other hand, they've got a new president. He's calling the shots. And as we've learned about the NFL, my guy, my coach, my team, my quarterback, it's always me. You know, I think it's more likely than not that people that go into the NFL are more likely to have my guy syndrome than don't have it. And if that happens, good for the Titans. Because if Matt LaFleur does get fired in Green Bay, and again, I am still so incredibly skeptical of the idea that Matt LaFleur could actually be on the hot seat in Green Bay. Again, they win every year. He's 72-63-1 as the head coach. Yeah, they got beat by the Eagles last year in the playoffs. The Eagles were good, folks. That's supposed to happen. They lose to the Eagles. They lose to the 49ers. That's supposed to happen. Now, when they lost those playoff games at home with Aaron Rodgers, that one was not supposed to happen. They were supposed to beat Tampa Bay. They were supposed to beat Jimmy G in San Francisco. So those are a little different. But if this happens, and Green Bay, for whatever reason, my guy syndrome, the offense wasn't playing well, a mutiny in the locker room, I don't know. If that happens, good for the Titans. Because one of two things will happen. Either that will allow them to land LaFleur as their next head coach, or Matt LaFleur's spot on the coaching carousel will keep another head coach from getting that job. So as of right now, if the season were to end today and there's a list of potential people the Titans could go talk to, here's who I would put, and I was thinking about this yesterday when I talked about whether or not the Titans should bring Brian Daboll in. And I said, I was like, you know, when it comes to Brian Daboll, I would give him an interview. But then I thought to myself, how much time do you have to interview people? The season ends, you start doing the interviews, and once you start doing the interviews, I mean, you don't have time to interview 47 people. So I got to 9 as far as my list is concerned. And my list would be, if I were the Titans, and I'm just putting this together, and again, with every single one of these guys, once I talk to them, I'd say, okay, I want you to sit down with me. Not everybody here is going to want to talk to me. So number 1 would be Matt Nagy. Number 2, Arthur Smith. Number 3, Mike McCarthy. Number 4, Kevin Stefanski, because he may be on the hot seat in Cleveland. Number 5, Matt LaFleur. And by the way, these are in no particular order. Number 5, Matt LaFleur. Number 6, Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator, former head coach at Boston College. I think he deserves a look. Number 7, Brian Daboll. I'd give Brian Daboll a shot. And number 8, Kelvin Shepard, the Lions defensive coordinator. He may actually get the LSU head coaching job, but I would put Kelvin Shepard on the list. And number 9, Raheem Morris, who I think should or probably will get fired in Atlanta. And I have to interview 2 external minority candidates to satisfy the Rooney Rule. Kelvin Shepard and Raheem Morris fit the bill. So that would be my interview list right now, as far as the Titans are concerned. I love how the distinguished gentleman says, Stefanski, nope. But you'd rather have Raheem Morris. So That's the current list of guys I'd sit down and talk to. Heavy on offense, 2 Rooney Rule candidates, and every single one of those guys except Kelvin Shepherd has some form of head coaching experience. But I absolutely would entertain the idea of Matt LaFleur as the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. So then I was thinking about, okay, we already know there are 2 jobs that are open. There's Tennessee and there's the New York Giants that are open for current jobs. What other jobs in the NFL are going to come open this year? So I've divided this into 3 separate categories. The already open jobs, that's Tennessee and New York. The probably will come open jobs, that's Miami, Arizona, and Cincinnati. 3 jobs where you can tell me that they're committed to the coach and everything else, but it looks like they are ripe for a firing. And then I've got 6 jobs that could come open. Cleveland. You know, with Cleveland, I just don't know how much you just don't know how much the fact that Deshaun Watson's trade and contract has absolutely fucked them and how much the owner puts that on himself or how much he puts that on the coach. So I've got Cleveland on the list as a could come open. I've got Atlanta on the list as a potential opening. I mean, Raheem Morris, you get rid of Arthur Smith and you tell me like, hey, we got rid of Arthur Smith because it just wasn't good enough. And Raheem Morris is just as bad. And it doesn't look like the Falcons are getting any better. And again, the Falcons have all these good players, and yet they can't win. Green Bay, because again, that's the whole thing we're talking about now is could Matt LaFleur actually get fired and there be a possibility that the Titans could hire Matt LaFleur? So they have to be on the list. Las Vegas, they stink and Pete Carroll is old. If they stunk and Pete Carroll was young, they wouldn't be on the list. If they didn't stink, even though Pete Carroll's old, they wouldn't be on the list. But because they stink and Pete Carroll's old, they're on the list. At 5, I put the New York Jets. And that may just be personal because it sounds like the owner of the New York Jets, Woody Johnson, who's a terrible owner, it sounds like he absolutely loves Aaron Glenn. And so every time Aaron Glenn has a just total fuck up, they just brush it off and act like, oh no, Aaron Glenn, he's the great leader coach. He's the great guy but every week with Aaron Glenn, it is something new. Every single week, it is something new. I mean, yesterday he got into it with the media about injury reporting. It was like, well, Rich has all the answers because Rich Shamini reported it, and I'm all mad about that. Brother, this is New York. You're going to pick a fight with the media? And he does it every week. Every effing week. So I'm just of the assumption that Aaron Glenn's a moron until I see Aaron Glenn do something that makes me think he's not a moron. So I got to put him on. He to me is just screaming one and done. Like I've already decided, like I've seen enough. Like this guy cannot coach in New York, which makes no sense because he played in New York. So at least you think he has an idea of what that is like. But he's too sensitive to coach in New York. So when it comes to LaFleur and it comes to the openings in the NFL, there are going to be 7 jobs that come open. Let's assume Tennessee, New York, Miami, Arizona, Cincinnati. That's 5. So there are going to be 2 jobs from the Clevelands, the Atlantas, the Vegases, the Packers, the Jets, or a big shocker that comes out there. There's going to be 2 of those or so that come open, and there will be 7 openings. So let's rank those jobs and say, okay, where do you sit? The number 1 job, in my opinion, that would come open on the coaching carousel is Cincinnati. That is the number 1 job. You are getting a franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow, a franchise elite quarterback. I don't give a shit that he's injury prone. I got it. Trust me, I don't like it either. But if I'm sitting there and saying, well, I can go get Joe Burrow's team, but Joe Burrow's injury prone, or I can go coach Kyler Murray's team, this is not a tough decision for me. So Cincinnati's 1. Burrow, Chase, Higgins, enough said. Bad ownership, traditionally tough division. They're going to have to rebuild the defense, but that's a good job. Cincinnati won. I've got the New York Giants number 2. The New York Giants, Jackson Dart as a rookie quarterback is 19th according to PFF as a quarterback in the league. That's pretty good. 3 good pass rushers, lame duck general manager, which means I'll get to pick my team, and it's New York City. I've got the Giants number 2. I put Arizona at number 3, and I don't know why I put Arizona at 3. I guess I put Arizona at 3 because it's a less worse job than Tennessee, Miami, and Cleveland. You know, Arizona, non-headline grabbing owner. I know he's had some issues with the league, Michael Bidwell, but he's not going to be one of these crazy asses, which again, you would have to deal with in Miami, Cleveland, or Tennessee. Low expectations, small market, no state income tax. Phoenix is a great place to live. I mean, it's a great place to live. And it looks like they're going to get a fresh start at quarterback. So when it comes to Arizona, not a great job because there's not a lot of talent on the team. And they don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. It's not going to be Kyler. But the owner's not a complete and total nut job, which makes it more appealing, I think, than the other 3. And then I would go Cleveland, who has a crazy owner but a great defense, and you probably get a fresh start at quarterback after this year. Then it's Miami and Tennessee. In one case, if you go to Miami, you're stuck with Tua, and you're going to be facing potentially a full rebuild. Not sure I like that. Again, a total rebuild. As in, tear it down. We're going to be bad next year. Probably bad with some signs of improvement the second year. And then I have to make the playoffs in the third year or else I'm fired. Which I don't necessarily like. And then Tennessee. And if I had to pick one or the other, Tennessee's already in a full rebuild with Cam Ward. Both have bad owners, Miami and Tennessee. I guess I'd lean towards Tennessee as the better spot because they already have a direction at quarterback. So it's not like I have to live with Tua for a year and then I get to move on from quarterback. But I don't really love Cam Ward. So it's hard for me to commit to Tennessee, but I think you're splitting hairs. I'll go Tennessee a scotch ahead of Miami, which takes us back to Matt LaFleur. So if Matt LaFleur were to get let go in Green Bay, I think he probably gets offered the Cincinnati job or he gets offered the New York Giants job. And if I were advising Matt LaFleur, I would advise him to take one of those 2 jobs over the Titans job. So then the question has to be, if you're the Titans and you really like Matt LaFleur and you really want him to be the head coach and you know you're going to be competing with Cincinnati, who has Joe Burrow as their starting quarterback, and you're going to be competing with New York for Matt LaFleur, how do you get him? And there's really 2 choices here. Either number 1, you don't get him, or number 2, you pay him. And that goes back to the question of how much does Amy like Matt LaFleur from his 1-year stint as the offensive coordinator in 2018. Because if Amy Adams Strunk loved Matt LaFleur in the interview process and that carried over to his year as OC, if she loved him and still loves him, she might be willing to pay for him. And even though Amy does not traditionally pay people until she fires them, the reason that she might pay Matt LaFleur is because they're committed to Cam Ward. And if the right coach can develop Cam Ward, then you will pay whatever it takes to get that coach, because developing Cam Ward is worth well more than you would pay a head coach, both from a football standpoint and a business standpoint. You're moving into a new stadium. Cam Ward will be going into year 3. you're going to want to see massive improvement. You're going to try to sell these tickets. Matt LaFleur helps you do that. If Matt LaFleur develops Cam Ward, you won't have a hard time selling PSLs in the new stadium if you're competing with a franchise quarterback in year 3. So if Amy is convinced and Chad Brinker is convinced that Matt LaFleur is the guy, then you got to pay him. And you have to give him a certain level of control that I don't think Brinker and Mike Borgonzi would want to give the head coach, but that's what you have to sacrifice in order to get a Matt LaFleur. Because I don't think Cincinnati is going to roll out the red carpet to try to pay Matt LaFleur, which is how you beat them. Now, I will say when it comes to deciphering the best job on the coaching market, I will say this as far as Matt LaFleur is concerned. I will tell you, if Green Bay were to come open, that's the best job on the market. And I don't know who the best coach on the market is. Again, I certainly, when I saw Matt LaFleur as the offensive coordinator in Tennessee and Green Bay was coming open with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, I did not think, Matt LaFleur will be the guy who gets that job. So who knows? But if Green Bay were to come open, that would be fitting a hand like a glove for one of these coaches. They would beg to get that job. Jordan Love's already there at quarterback. You just traded for Micah Parsons. You've got a playoff roster, a young playoff roster. And you have no weaselly owner that gets in the way, that goes crazy and goes and Leroy Jenkins and everything else with the operation. It would be the top job on the market. But again, it's not like Matt LaFleur is going to get the Green Bay job. My guess would be, and I don't know why I'm thinking this, my guess would be they would hire Clint Kubiak to be the head coach in Green Bay. Because Green Bay likes getting coordinators, and Green Bay likes offensive coaches, and Green Bay likes that West Coast offense, and Kubiak, comes from San Francisco with Shanahan and Ed Policy. I think it's the grandson of Carmen Policy, the old president of the 49ers. So I would circle Clint Kubiak as the next coach in Green Bay, but that's their business, not mine. And that's if they were to fire Matt LaFleur, which I don't think they are, but it's at least worth talking about. So that's the first thing. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I absolutely love Hiller at my home, and trust me, you'll love Hiller too. Again, I tell people this all the time. Trust me when it comes to Hiller about how much I love them, because they do a fabulous job. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction. If happy you'll be, or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more by visiting happyhiller.com. Hiller, where they have professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians who come into your home and they leave it clean and better and nicer than they found it. That's right. Care is their core value. They believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. And they take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay, so I want to get to this topic when it comes to the college football playoff and the college football playoff rankings. I try not to do this because I know I'm smarter than this. But I tell guys every year, do not get caught in the weekly college football playoff rankings. It is a television show, and I have to be honest with you, it's not a very good one. In fact, last night, Louisville and Kentucky basketball, by the way, how about Louisville basketball? Louisville, Kentucky basketball last night came on at 7, and so I was waiting for the game. And I'm like, what's on TV? I got to watch something and the ranking show was on. I gave it about 3 minutes and I got so bored. I was like, I can't watch this anymore. So I try not to get caught up into the weekly ranking show because the committee every year at the end just decides whatever they want to do is what they're going to do. Again, they've moved teams up and moved teams down and put teams in the playoffs and taken teams out because of the eye test, which is no metric, and it's just, we think Ohio State's better, they're in. So I always try to keep that in mind. And again, a lot of these things are going to work themselves out to where there might be 1 or 2 teams that have a gripe at the end of this, But for the most part, it's going to be a shrug your shoulders and say, yeah, that's pretty obvious who the best teams are. But it looks like to me, the college football, it looks to me like the college football playoff committee is poised to screw Vanderbilt over. And that is by doing what the committee absolutely loves to do, which is to make up reasons to keep a team that they do not want in the playoff, and to put a team they do want in the playoff in. Vandy is ranked number 14 in the latest college football playoff rankings. Notre Dame is ranked 9th. Now, again, the trap I try to avoid is getting too worked up because these things are going to work themselves out. If Notre Dame loses to Pittsburgh on Saturday or Vanderbilt loses to Kentucky on Saturday, then it all takes care of itself in the end. But as of right now, Notre Dame is 7-2, and they have not beaten anybody. I don't give a shit that they beat USC. This is another trick of the committee. They use the back end of the rankings to justify the front end of the rankings. I don't understand it, other than it seems to be a little treacherous, but that's their business, not mine. But again, I don't think USC is any good. I haven't paid attention to USC football in 2 years, and neither is anybody else. That's the one team they've beaten. The argument the committee puts out there is, well, Notre Dame beat USC, and Vanderbilt hasn't beaten anybody because apparently Missouri's not ranked anymore. LSU's not ranked. And so these SEC teams that Vanderbilt's beaten, well, they don't count, according to the committee. But at the end of the day, Vanderbilt, in my opinion, Vanderbilt's 8-2, and they haven't beaten any team that is the creme de la creme of college football, and neither has Notre Dame. Vandy plays in the SEC, and they play an SEC schedule. They have to go to Alabama. Notre Dame is an independent, and they play an ACC schedule. And they lost to an ACC team in Miami. To look at their resumes, which again, I think are incredibly similar, and to just say that team is 9th, that team is 14th, is absurd. And this draws me to what I think is the biggest problem with the college football playoff committee and what I find to be the most disingenuous aspect of trying to rank the best teams because the computer used to get it wrong. Whether this is done consciously or subconsciously by the committee, it feels like on a consistent basis, the one thing the committee is dedicated to is brand. Alabama got into the playoff over an undefeated Florida State team in 2023, I believe because of brand, because of Nick Saban's brand, because of Alabama's brand, because those committee members thought, well, Alabama must be better than Florida State without their quarterback because Nick Saban is their coach. Based off of what? Florida State's quarterback being hurt was a convenient excuse because prior to that, 9 years, Ohio State's quarterback got hurt, and they got in over smaller brands, Baylor and TCU. And the excuse then was, well, they won their conference championship. They had the extra data point. Notre Dame is 9th because of brand. That's why they're 9th. Because they're Notre Dame. They played for the title last year. Newt Rockne, Rudy, Lou Holtz, the luck of the Irish, touchdown Jesus. That's why they're 9th. And Vanderbilt is 14th because they are Vanderbilt. The reality should be this, and I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know what the committee that's there. I don't know. The reality is this. Vanderbilt, if they end up with 2 losses in the SEC, they have 2 losses in the SEC right now, both respectable losses at Texas, at Alabama. If they beat Kentucky and they beat UT, which they will not be favored to do when they play UT, they should be in the playoff. If Vanderbilt goes 10-2, they should be in the playoff, period. And let me just say this, and this is not a threat because I'm not the one to make this threat. This is just reality. This is just a promise. If Vanderbilt goes 10-2 and they do not get put in the college football playoff, Greg Sankey is going to hit the nuclear option on what the future of that playoff is if a 10-2 SEC team gets left out, and I'm just telling you, nobody wants that. He doesn't want that, but they'll do it. If they feel like a 10-2 team from the SEC gets left out in favor of a 10-2 Notre Dame team, which went on the road, lost to A&M, lost to Miami. So, again, the committee, they always change their mind in the end anyways. It feels kind of political one way or another, but Vanderbilt 14, Notre Dame 9, I don't see it. If you wanted to say Notre Dame 13, Vanderbilt 14, we can have that discussion. If you wanted to say Notre Dame 14, Vanderbilt 13, we can have that discussion. The resume for Notre Dame is not that much better, if it's better at all, than Vandy's. So I'm just telling you, when it comes to Vandy, it kind of looks like Vandy might be getting porked a little bit. Okay, Braden Gall joins us now on the program. You got a big old smile, Braden Gall. I
love a good porking, you know. It's always my favorite.
I feel like Vanderbilt
on a Tuesday.
I feel like Vanderbilt is about to get porked by the committee, but I want to start. And we've put up on your graphic here, not only the owner of 440 Sports, but also an owner of the Green Bay Packers.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
Matt LaFleur.
I got it right there.
Is he actually on the hot seat? Because if Matt LaFleur is on the hot seat, or if Matt LaFleur does get fired, if that happens, I feel like that changes everything as far as we're talking about the Titans and all that's concerned. So, is he actually on the hot seat?
I don't think so. It doesn't mean that there's not pressure building. I think they'd be foolish to do something, just like I think if Kevin Stefanski comes available for Cleveland, I think those are the top two candidates on any list. Kevin Stefanski and Matt LaFleur would be hired in like a matter of seconds, I feel like. So if I'm a Titans fan, I would, and I'm Amy Adams drunk, like I would bathe in sulfuric acid to get Kevin Stefanski or Matt LaFleur to come back here. There's certainly a tie with LaFleur, as everybody knows. I think he's been the best coordinator, maybe in modern franchise history. And the offense was like, up until like 2 games ago when they lost to Carolina, bad loss at home, and they couldn't score on Monday night against Philadelphia. I want to say they were number 4 or 5 in the league in EPA on offense. The defense is championship caliber. This is what happens in high pressure jobs when you haven't won enough playoff games, or you got to be there a lot longer than I think LaFleur does, not succeeding. And he's been largely incredibly successful. His offenses were outstanding for most of the season up until 2 weeks ago. They're starting to figure out Jordan Love. They don't have their star tight end. They don't have their best offensive lineman now. They just lost to an injury. They don't have their number 1 receiver or number 2 receiver. Like the offense is missing some pieces as well. I also just think Jordan Love is, I might be the only person in my family that thinks Jordan Love has always been overrated. I'd like to hear what Robbie has to say about that. I've always believed that, you kind of had to pay him because you just have to pay quarterbacks these days. I would be shocked if Matt LaFleur is available at the end of the year. Just totally say, like, if Stefanski is available at the end of the year, I would be shocked. Those are 2 very, very good NFL head coaches. I think it would be foolish for both organizations to make a move on either of those 2 guys.
Okay, let's say LaFleur does hit the market. You're Chad Brinker, you're Amy Adams Strunk, you're Mike Borgonzi. What are you willing to give Matt LaFleur in order to make him the next coach of the Titans? And all I know is that, from my understanding, in 2018, when they interviewed Matt LaFleur to be the head coach, Amy loved Matt LaFleur. She ultimately deferred to John Robinson, who went with Mike Vrabel over Matt LaFleur. So they obviously have both had decent careers as head coaches, but in that instance, Amy liked him so much that Amy was willing to pay to bring him in to be offensive coordinator. And so let's say Amy still loves Matt LaFleur. Plus, I think LaFleur and Vrabel hate each other, and I think that would only make Amy like him more. So if you are dead set on getting Matt LaFleur, what would you be willing to do to try to get Matt LaFleur so that you don't lose him to a better job, which inevitably will come open this year?
I don't know what, like, are you talking like total control of player personnel? Like,
would you give him that? Would you pay him just an astronomical amount?
I mean, it ain't my money.
Fire him from.
It ain't my money. Like, give it to him. Like, the money's like, if you're trying to, like, it, the things he's going to decide. I think this is sort of ridiculous because I don't think he's going to be available. But if he's available and he wants to pick and choose where he's going to go, it's going to be about what he thinks is valuable, not from what the organization can give you from like an offer standpoint, because all these jobs are basically the same. There's only 32 of these jobs in the world. It seems like we're going to have a quieter coaching carousel in the NFL this year than maybe we've had in a while. There's average about 7 jobs per year. I don't think we're going to get to that number this year because a lot of the new coaches I think are going to keep their jobs. Miami, Arizona, I think could come available. That's maybe it. There could be 4. There might be
Cincinnati.
I don't know about that. I heard you say that. I think it's possible, but I don't know. It's possible. It all depends on what you value. If you're Matt LaFleur, like, do you think that, like, do you want to be the big fish in the big pond and go to New York? Do you love the idea of being back here with people you know in Nashville, where there's no income tax, a brand new stadium, tons of cap space, and lots of first round, high draft picks potentially? Do you love Cam Ward? Do you think, like, Joe Burrow is clearly the best quarterback? What do you think of Kyler Murray? What do you think of the quarterback situation in Miami? Like, there's all different ways that he would probably just get to pick and choose. I doubt it's like, well, the Giants are offering me $9 million and the Titans are offering me 10. Like, I don't know if that's the thing that motivates a guy at that level. It's probably, where do you think you can win the most? I mean, Jim Harbaugh took the Chargers job for a reason. He could have picked any job he wanted, and he picked Justin Herbert as a young player with sort of a good offensive and defensive line situation at the time, and it's worked out really well for him. So I don't know what he would value. That's the question. If he has a great relationship with Brinker and Amy, do you want to throw Borgonzi under the bus like that? I don't know. That's up to the people behind the scenes and in the room. I don't think giving him total control over the roster is all that valuable anymore. In fact, the coaches I've talked to, they don't see that as the reason coaches are leaving college and becoming coordinators or leaving college for the NFL is because they don't want to do all the responsibility that it takes to run a front office. They want that to be someone else that they trust to do that. So maybe handpicking a general manager, but like, you can't. That complicates the whole situation too. So I don't know if there's something they can offer other than, do you love Cam Ward? Absolutely, I do. And if he loves Cam Ward's talent, that's probably your best selling point.
So when it comes to the Titans and who they're going to hire, I have to ask, do you have a sense of what they should do? I mean, again, they've gone out of their way to say that they're, oh yeah, we're just starting the process. We'll try to figure that out. We'll try to so on and so forth. But do you have an idea as to what they should do? That's something that they can get? Because again, when it comes to LaFleur, I'm not the biggest Matt LaFleur guy in the world, but I will say, I mean, I would take him to be the head coach of the Titans.
The way he stacks plays, the way he keeps powder dry in a game, and up until literally like 3 games this year, it's been 6.5 years of almost near perfect offensive scheme and play calling. So I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater as an owner of the team here. Like, there was a drive.
Whoops. What happened to Braden? I lost Braden. He got sniped. Oh well. And I was going to put my list up. What happened? You got sniped there.
Yeah, LaFleur's got agents everywhere. No, he had a drive. I can't remember what game it was earlier in the year, where they literally, like, he saved like 6 or 7 play calls for the one drive where they had to have it, and he went right down the field, boom, 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 and they stiff armed somebody and won the game pretty easily. Like, he is a master at doing that stuff. At least so I trust him to make adjustments on a couple of bad games. They played terribly against Carolina. The Eagles are a Super Bowl champion, so playing poorly against them is bad, but it's not the end of the world. Let's see what he does the next couple of games. I have faith in Matt LaFleur's ability to install an offense, prepare an offense, adjust during the game. All things, of course, we'd love to see the Titans do at some point. And I agree with Robbie when he said if he gets fired, he's going to go somewhere that he wins. I do think winning is near the top of the list for him. So I think back to your question about strategy. I don't think you have to listen to Borgonzi directly to pick out the right strategy. But when he says we need a great leader and we need someone who works well with me, essentially, those two things aren't like the most important things, but I think you can kind of discern what they're going for. I think the most important thing is to develop Cam Ward. And if developing Cam Ward and the young offensive pieces around him, which is Helm and DK and Iomanner and Skoronski and Latham and whoever else they draft this year, if that's the most important piece, I don't want that guy also trying to learn how to be a head coach, also trying to be a culture builder and a developer and a leader of men or all these other things. What you want is a Vrabel-LaFleur combination. You want a great leader who is a great CEO, who manages the games, who sees every angle of every game, who knows the strategy of it all, who can coach people up, bring people together, be the leader. And then you want a LaFleur type who is this offensive wizard who can just sit in his laboratory and cook with Cam Ward. That's what you want. And so if that's a Brian Flores type or a Robert Saleh type or whoever it might be, I don't know. But I think you want a leader as a head coach who's a great CEO, who's a game day manager, who knows how to get the best out of everybody. And then you want an offensive wizard whose only job it is to focus on Cam Ward and the young players around him. I don't want you spending any time on anything else. Just get in the lab with the offensive young players and maximize Cam Ward. What does that look like? Who are those names? It's definitely not Mike McCarthy. As a Packers shareholder, Mike McCarthy, the NFL passed him by 15 years ago. I don't want any part of that. He has not invented a new play call in 15 years, and I don't want any part of that. The other guys that are available all seem fine, but I would go leader as a head coach with an offensive sort of up-and-comer with a creative young modernization of the offense around Cam Ward. That would be the strategy.
Okay, so here was the list I put out there earlier today. Again, you can't interview 47 people. You can only interview so many. So I put on the list Matt Nagy, Arthur Smith, Mike McCarthy, Kevin Stefanski, Matt LaFleur, Jeff Hafley, who I think is going to get some head coaching looks, former BC head coach, Packers DC. Brian Daboll, I put Daboll on the list. And then Kelvin Shepard and Raheem Morris. I think Raheem Morris is probably getting fired in Atlanta, and that would knock out my two external minority candidates for the Rooney Rule with Kelvin Shepard and Raheem Morris. Do you think the next Titans head coach is on that list?
I mean, outside of Arthur Smith and Matt Nagy, I would say no. I think the top two, and those wouldn't be my top two candidates, but my assumption was that Arthur Smith was going to be the head coach the second I learned that Brian Callahan was fired. That was my like kind of initial reaction to that. Pretty good offensive mind, of course. History here, knows the organization. I don't need to give you guys the rundown. Kelvin Shepard is super interesting because of how much the people around him respect him from a leadership standpoint. It feels very D'Amico Ryans. The conversation around D'Amico Ryans is very similar to the conversation around Kelvin Shepard in this like former linebacker who's great at diagnosing plays and just has this thing for kind of maximizing people around him. I think you're right to say that he's going to be a high-level candidate for LSU. I don't think he wants to go to college. I think he wants to stay in the NFL. So I think Shepard will be an excellent choice. I think Morris, if he gets fired, will be an excellent choice because then you can go get the whiz kid offensive coordinator with him, and you don't have to coach Raheem Morris into how to be a head coach in the NFL. Jeff Hafley's not ready. He was not a good head coach necessarily at Boston College. He was going to be on the hot seat, and he left early to go be a coordinator for the Packers. I don't think Jeff Hafley is a legitimate candidate. I don't think Stefanski or LaFleur are going to be available, and I certainly don't have any interest in Mike McCarthy, just full stop on him. I don't know about Nagy. Nagy, I'm very torn on that. I know that he has a relationship with Borgonzi. I know that he's been a head coach in the past. He's the offensive guy. There's something about it that just doesn't feel there's no upside there. It doesn't feel like. Arthur Smith is interesting, but I also think the upside is limited. I think you got to go get it doesn't have to be a defensive coach, but it needs to be someone with experience. And even if it's just a transitionary couple of years, you got to just reestablish a culture, reestablish personality, create a standard, right? Which is what Borgonzi said at his press conference. And then have somebody with like two assistants over there on the side with Cam Ward every day. Just, game planning up an offense that maximizes his ability, fixes his pocket presence, fixes feet work, take that beautiful arm talent and maximize it. I just don't see, I think it has to be a defensive mind, or it should be a defensive mind, but I don't know which offensive coach would be a head coach and great at being a CEO, but then would back off wanting to develop the quarterback. That's the issue. I don't know who that would be. Maybe Nagy's that guy.
Sounds like you want them to hire Mike Vrabel. Braden with us on the program.
Yeah, I do.
Do you think that Brian Daboll should be an option when it comes to this? And I'll throw Mike Kafka in there too, because I said last week on the program that, when Mike Borgonzi came out and said that the next coach has to have a good relationship with the general manager, I didn't directly take that to mean that he needs to be somebody that the general manager has worked with before, but I did not take that to be the case of somebody that they needed to work with before. So I do wonder for you when it comes to that, would Kafka be on the list because he will now get head coaching experience, worked with Borgonzi in Kansas City, Doug Peterson also worked with Borgonzi in Kansas City. And then Daboll just got fired. He's got experience. What do you think of those three?
So Daboll and Peterson seem similar to me in that you're probably going to get a pretty high floor, relatively speaking, right out of the gate. Doug Peterson traditionally gets the most out of his teams right away, but he doesn't have a lot of upside, right? He kind of maximizes his ability after 2 years, and then it kind of peters out real fast. Again, Mike Kafka, I don't know how much experience he gains this year. I don't think you want to hire someone who has to learn to be a CEO, a culture builder, a standard setter, and a game day manager. Now, Vrabel had no experience when he stepped into the role. So if you're going down the Vrabel path, which is clearly how I feel they should go, then you can throw that back in my face and say, well, Vrabel didn't have any of that stuff, and he proved to be just fine. And he did. So it's possible that there is a guy like that out there, and maybe Kafka is one of those guys. Very, very smart dude. Been an offensive player his whole career, quarterback, etc. Daboll is interesting. I think I think he's too toxic to sell it to fans. Just because he just got fired. Did he get a raw deal because his Neighbors is injured and Scadaboo's injured and Dart got hurt and his offensive line was totally banged up? Maybe he got a raw deal. Maximized Daniel Jones a couple of years ago. So I think you could do worse than Daboll. Excuse me. I think he might get an opportunity in college with all the jobs that are open, frankly. I think Daboll could be a major candidate in the college ranks. So remember, Alabama offensive coordinator back in the day, Saban Belichick guy. So they don't inspire me, Jared. I don't know about you. A lot of these names don't inspire me. The Shepard name really is kind of a really intriguing Vrabel-ish type of move. So we'll see.
Okay, and then on the Titans front, again, it was a good weekend for them. Fernando Mendoza, I think, cemented himself as of right now as quarterback one in the draft class. Plus,
but you said Mendoza has?
Yeah. Who do you think the top quarterback in the class is?
I think Ty Simpson will go 1.1.
Fascinating.
Ty Simpson has all the things that you want Cam Ward to have.
Well, I think
what are
very good.
Well, what are Cam? I'm just saying, let's say we believe in Cam Ward for the sake of conversation. And what are the things he needs to do? Well, pocket presence is one. His footwork is another.
Accuracy.
And being very specific with his body control. Ty Simpson is one of the most polished pocket movers I have seen in college football in a while. You watch his footwork in the pocket. You watch how he changes platform. You watch how he drives up the pocket to deliver a pass when he feels pressure. He does all the things. And I'm not saying that Cam Ward is not going to find the ability to do that. But if you watch Ty Simpson this week against a very good defense in Oklahoma, you'll see all the things that you need to see from Cam Ward next year.
Let me just ask you this then on the Ty Simpson front. If you bought the Titans tomorrow and the Titans ended up with the number 1 pick and they said to you, what do you want to do? Do you want to try to trade Cam? And you're obviously going to get pennies on the dollar if you trade Cam. Do you want to trade Cam and take Ty Simpson 1-1, or do you want to try to trade that pick and work with Cam? What would you do? Because it sounds like you really like Ty Simpson.
If I could get a first round, this is fairy tale, La La Land stuff. But if you're telling me I could get a first round pick for Cam Ward, which I think you could do, frankly, probably a late, you go to the Rams and say, hey, look, you have 2 first round picks. Trade me your last pick. We'll give you your last first round pick, which will probably be 26, 27, 28 or whatever this year. We'll give you Cam Ward and we'll take Ty Simpson number 1. I think that is a better place for the franchise to be, but it's not realistic. It's not a real thing that anyone's considering. It's not a real thing that the Titans are going to consider. It's not a real thing that anyone else would consider. Cam Ward is the team right now. And so you're going to build around Cam Ward. Do I think he, again, I don't want to go back and relitigate pre-draft conversations, but was he as good as anybody in the draft before him? No. Was he as good as anybody in this draft coming up? We all said no. I don't think anything has changed about that. It doesn't mean he can't be a good starting quarterback in the NFL.
Okay, what do you think about the trade out possibilities? Because to me, I'm thinking, okay, if you trade out, and let's say they trade 5 or 6, well, you're not going to get Reuben Bain. And apparently that's the guy that everybody says is the great pass rusher, or the kid from Ohio State, or the receiver from Arizona State. And I'm looking at this team and I'm like, the kind of players they need they need the impact receiver, the impact pass rusher, that's who they need. They don't need a mid-level first-round Corey Davis type of player. They need an impact player in the first round, and that's with a trade out and with more first-rounders. So where is kind of if you were setting the board up and saying, okay, this is where I feel comfortable trading to given the talent this team needs and the talent that's available in this year's draft, where would you say that lies?
Anywhere in the first round. But more specifically, I think looking at I would look at the Rams, truly. The Rams have 2 first-round picks. They have the Atlanta Falcons pick, and they will have their own pick. Their own pick is going to be, in my opinion, very, very late. I think it's a very, very good football team. Atlanta right now is probably picking between 7 and 12, let's say. I think you could go to the Rams, and if you're picking 2 or 3, this would still work. You could go to the Rams and say, come on up, get your franchise quarterback of the future, have him sit behind Matthew Stafford for a year, and give us your 2 first-round picks this year, maybe a first next year, maybe a second next year, whatever else you need to sweeten the deal. And then with that Atlanta Falcons pick that the Rams give you, you can then target, I think, a game-changing player at either edge or at receiver. I think Arvell Reese at Ohio State is probably maybe the number 1 player in the draft that's not a quarterback. He is an off-ball linebacker who's going to be put into a pass rushing situation in the NFL. Reuben Bain is probably number 2 as far as the pass rushers go. They're probably your top 2, and that might be it at that position on the top tier. None of the receivers, in my opinion, are top 3, top 5 good. But there's a lot of them that are really good from 7, 8, 9 down to about 20, 25. Jordan Tyson at Arizona State, Carnell Tate at Ohio State, Mekhi Lemon at USC, Chris Bell at Louisville. I know your guy there is very, very good. There's a lot of other ones. Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, Chris Brazel from Tennessee is a late first-round pick potentially. There's a lot of names in there that I'm even still forgetting. So a lot of good quality receivers in that middle to late first round. So if you could tell me that the Titans have pick 8, pick 27, and pick 33, which is their pick in the first round potentially, or 34 hypothetically, I think you could anchor corner, edge rusher, and receiver with those 3 picks. I think if you can get 3 picks in the top 35, you can solve 3 of your problems, and you can massively influx talent into the roster that helps Cam Ward and the new coaching staff.
Okay. Braden Gall, last one for you. What do you think of my suggestion that Vanderbilt's getting screwed by the committee by being so far behind Notre Dame?
Well, I think your brand thing is a very, very old and I think kind of tired argument here. Why would Vanderbilt be ahead of 2-loss Michigan, 2-loss Miami, 2-loss USC, all of which are significantly larger brands than Vanderbilt?
Because you can't make an argument for those guys. You cannot make an argument for Miami, who has lost to SMU and Louisville, who just lost to Cal. You cannot make an argument for Miami to be in the playoff field this year unless they were to win the ACC and they get an automatic qualifier.
Utah, BYU, Texas Tech, all ahead of Vanderbilt, none of which are big brands at all. I think the brand argument is totally missing how complicated it is to actually dive into the quality of the teams. Notre Dame lost on a back shoulder fade on the last play of the game to the undefeated number 3 team in the nation. And the committee has told us, and I think this is the right way to look at football games now in 2025 because we have brains and we're smart. Texas A&M and Notre Dame are identical. They are basically even. They played an even game when they were on the same field together. So you can't have Notre Dame too far behind Texas A&M, number 1. I agree with your point, though, that the resumes are largely identical. 2 offenses that are Notre Dame's offense is technically better. Their resume is technically better, but their strength of schedule is almost identical. Their defensive metrics are pretty similar. Notre Dame is a more talented team. So if you're looking at player for player who has game-changing, talent at multiple positions, who's better along the line of scrimmage, it's probably Notre Dame. So could they be closer by a spot or 2? Sure, go for it. But Vanderbilt doesn't have a win over a ranked team technically. Notre Dame does. I look at their schedules, and I think Sagarin has them basically as the dead even strength of schedule, 22 versus 21. Notre Dame has played, their difficult road game against Miami is not that different than Vanderbilt's road losses that they've had. Vanderbilt played pretty well against Alabama. The turnovers, I think, probably made that score look worse than it really was, probably a closer game. But on the other side, the Texas score is probably closer than the game really was. So it doesn't really matter to get worked up about it. But Notre Dame is not 9 and Vanderbilt 14 because Vanderbilt's brand is smaller. There are legitimate reasons. Like BYU, if you're upset, I think BYU is the team that if you look at their strength of schedule and their quality of wins and their loss, which they got blown out by Texas Tech, I think you could look at BYU and you say, why aren't we ahead of BYU? Why aren't we ahead of Utah? I think you could say that, and that's totally fine. If you move Vanderbilt up to 12, the difference between 9 and 12 is basically nothing. So maybe that makes more sense to your point. But I think Notre Dame belongs where they are. I think they are better than Oklahoma, BYU, Utah, and Vanderbilt. Are they better than Texas? I don't know. That one I don't know on.
Braden Gall, owner of 440 Sports and owner of the Green Bay Packers, joining us here on the program. And, of course, we've got a football show on Friday and the Hot Read podcast and everything else. You want to show all the people your official ownership of the Green Bay Packers.
There you go. That is my share of stock right there, passed down to me when my grandfather died. There you go.
May Pawpaw rest in peace.
That's exactly right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Braden Gall joining us here on the program. Okay. I've got a L'Jarius Sneed topic I want to get to, and I've also got your reaction to get to. I went a little bit longer with Braden than I thought I was going to go. So when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed, did anybody see what came out from PK, who has been, in fairness to PK, we'll get on him in a second, but he has been all over reporting on the L'Jarius Sneed shooting alleged situation in Texas. And apparently L'Jarius Sneed has been indicted by a grand jury, which sounds like it's a big deal, but it's apparently for a misdemeanor. Apparently Sneed's former personal assistant is going to end up being the fall guy in this, and it looks like they're setting him up to take the fall. And that's a nice headline, but it doesn't change anything about how I feel when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed. And that is that L'Jarius Sneed is the most glaring symptom of Amy Adams Strunk's dysfunction since the day she fired Mike Vrabel. L'Jarius Sneed took the money because winning was not a priority to him, and because he knew, even though he said he didn't, and the rest of the league knew, he had bad knees. And this is what makes him the epitome of what's wrong with Amy Adams Strunk's influence on the organization post-Mike Vrabel. Now, she should have never hired Rand Carthon to begin with to work with Mike Vrabel because, again, if you're hiring somebody to work with Mike Vrabel, it's got to be somebody who's handpicked and approved by Vrabel. But once she decided to move on from Vrabel, that was the opportunity to blow everything up and to start over again. The only commitment you had as an organization at that time was really to the young quarterback who you took in the second round, who you didn't have to be committed to because, again, you used a second-round pick on him, not a first-round pick. You have to be more committed to Cam Ward than you ever had to be with Will Levis because of where you drafted him. But as soon as she fired Mike Vrabel was as soon as she started blowing this thing up. And it's not about what most people think. Most people think the problem Amy Adams Strunk had was firing Mike Vrabel. That's not my problem. My problem is everything that happened after she fired Mike Vrabel. Clueless Rand Carthon was promoted. And I think that was as an FU to Mike Vrabel. Because Mike Vrabel didn't really think Rand was any good and didn't want to work with Rand. And so the Titans and Amy decided, this guy is our future. Forget about Mike Vrabel. And Rand Carthon, clueless Rand Carthon, made a deal that no other team with a brain would have made. And the Titans in L'Jarius Sneed are both paying for that decision literally and paying for it figuratively by sitting there and watching L'Jarius Sneed sit on IR while you have to pay him and you have to trade your third-round pick to Kansas City. But again, that doesn't mean that firing Vrabel was the bad decision. It's every decision since they fired Vrabel that has been absolutely heinous. Promoting Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker, hiring Brian Callahan, letting Rand Carthon make roster and free agent decisions, firing Rand Carthon, but not firing Brian Callahan and not firing Chad Brinker, drafting a quarterback with a head coach on the hot seat. Just all bad decisions. And the macro bad decisions have led to the micro bad decisions, like using the 7th overall pick on J.C. Latham. But everybody looks at it around the country like, oh, they fired the great Mike Vrabel. And I just don't believe that was the big issue as much as it was everything after they fired the great Mike Vrabel that's really been the problem. I believe if they had cleaned house on Black Monday of January 2024 and had hired Thomas Dimitrov to be the executive vice president / general manager and let Thomas Dimitrov run the football team, you'd be a lot better today than 1-8. And L'Jarius Sneed epitomizes that stupidity. So, I don't think he's ever going to play again for the Titans. But when I look back at what's happened with the organization, I'm telling you, L'Jarius Sneed epitomizes the post-Mike Vrabel, Amy Adams Strunk fuck-up. And so does the record. And by the way, if Cam Ward ends up being what I think he's going to be, which is a bust, he'll be also on that list. Because it was a bunch of inexperienced people, inexperienced coach, experienced general manager thinking, we can coach them, when it's like, oh, I don't think so. And now you've got Mike McCoy coaching him. All right, let's get to some reaction here today on the program. Trent says, Jared, did you hear PK glazing Mike Vrabel this morning on 102.5? Yes, I did. I got to take my kid to school. And look, I'm not going to be one of these people that leaves 102.5 and says, I never listen to 102.5. Because I do listen to 102.5, especially in the mornings. The other shows, not so much, although I do listen to the afternoon show a little bit. But the morning show, I mean, I liked the morning show when I was there, so I like the morning show now. And yes, Paul Koharski was wearing knee pads in the studio today when it came to Vrabel. Again, it's not like Paul completely patronized Vrabel when he was the coach. They got into it in the press conferences. I called him out on the Tierre Tart thing where he totally ran with Vrabel's narrative. Paul likes Vrabel. I think Paul thinks Vrabel's a great coach, but Paul loves that macho Vrabel, that machismo. That's the same thing people like about John Gruden. Paul loves it with Vrabel. And so the fact that Vrabel's doing well is an opportunity for everybody that likes Vrabel to sit there and say, yes, yes. So there is some of that. Brian says, give me Robert Saleh or Brian Flores with a great offensive coordinator. Again, they're not going to hire Brian Flores. He's suing the NFL. And when it comes to Robert Saleh, what I try to understand is you hate all these other coaches. Matt Nagy's got that stank on him from having been in Chicago. Arthur Smith has the stank on him from being in Atlanta. Brian Dable has that giant stank on him. And yet Robert Saleh has no stank? Explain that to me. I'm not saying Saleh's a good coach or a bad coach. I have no idea. I don't know Robert Saleh. But the amount of people out there that are like, oh, Robert Saleh, oh, God, he'd be great. Can I ask based off of what? Like, what makes him such a great leader that you're sitting there saying, oh, yeah, we got to have Robert Saleh? Derek says, the Titans drafted Cam Ward because he spun to the left and he threw well during his pro day, telling the coaches he would regret not selecting him. Unfortunately, inexperience led to the Titans missed him. I actually kind of agree with that. I think the Titans got way too caught up in the intangibles when it came to Cam Ward, and they didn't focus enough on the tangibles. So he's a great leader and he works hard. Great. But is he accurate? I mean, I did, and again, I was in college when the Tim Tebow thing happened, and I was focused in on basketball more so than the NFL. I mean, I kept up with the NFL as a fan. And I was the one that was like, hey, Tim Tebow won in Florida. Tim Tebow's winning in the NFL. Why is it Tim Tebow? Because Tim Tebow can't throw. That's why. And I'm not saying Cam can't throw. He just can't throw well consistently, which is a problem. So when it comes to why the Titans took him, I think they took him because they convinced themselves that, oh my God, he works so hard and I can coach him, which all these guys do. But he didn't have Drake May's talent or Jaden Daniels' talent or CJ Stroud's talent, or he didn't have high-end talent. He didn't have Justin Fields' talent. Kyle says, Jared, have we ruined Cam Ward yet? Well, I would say this. I'd say the first 9 weeks of the season haven't helped. By the way, I got to tell you, I've been listening to Mike McCoy's press conferences. This guy, he talks and talks. He doesn't say shit. It's like I don't even listen to him anymore because it's like, what the he ain't going to say anything that matters. All right, that's going to do it for us. Great show today. Thank you to Braden for hopping on the program today. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if this is going to end the show or not, because our software, which normally, is pretty good about the way it ends, you just click a couple buttons. It says right now we're not live, and I'm telling you we're live. So with that, everybody have a great day, and you'll see if I'm picking my ass here in about 5 minutes still on the stream.